polite. Keep in mind that pretty much anything you say is going to be recorded. And oftentimes these cases, you may look reasonable on tape, you may act reasonably, but then what happens is on the ride to the station, you may all of a sudden be very frustrated, but unbeknownst to you, this whole conversation is being recorded between you and the police officer. So sometimes the first thing that I would say is be polite. Also be cooperative. This is not the time that you're going to be able to convince the person on the side of the road of your sobriety. It's not going to happen. My advice is that the field sobriety tests that you would take at the station are voluntary, or at the side of the road are voluntary. You don't have to do them. Even you can ask the officer, are these tests voluntary? Do I have to do them? And the officer will almost certainly say, yes, they're completely voluntary, you don't have to do them. Well, you can politely decline to take the tests. The reason being is that those tests are subjective. It's somebody else's opinion that you were impaired. However, once the officer reads you, chances are you may get arrested. And if the officer does arrest you, my advice, and different people have different takes on this, is my advice would be if you've never been in trouble before and you've had a relatively reasonable amount to drink, you can certainly agree to take the state-administered chemical test. But always, 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 after taking their test at the station, you want your own independent blood test. In addition, after that, you're entitled to an additional chemical breath test at another police department. You want to take as many tests as you possibly can because you shouldn't accept the reality that the state's test is going to be accurate. You want the opportunity to have some kind of evidence on your own behalf to, counteract the state's test. Assuming that you get arrested, the state by law has to read to you what's called an implied consent card. That card outlines your rights, and it says to you, you are entitled to additional chemical tests from qualified personnel of your own choosing. So that means that you are entitled to go take a blood, breath, or urine test at a hospital, which would offer a blood test or even a urine test. Now, granted, you're going to have to pay for it, and you may have to be able to make certain arrangements with a credit card or a debit card or cash, or have a relative come to the hospital to pay for it. But then there's always another police department that's within relatively short distance where they can go give you a breath test on another machine. If the state doesn't accommodate or reasonably accommodate your request for an independent chemical test, then their evidence should not be used against you in court. So it's your opportunity to provide favorable or exculpatory evidence that shows that you're not guilty of the charge that you've been, levied with. Well, typically, in order for a state's test to be utilized against you, the state's test has to be done within 3 hours of the time that driving has ended, or sitting in. If you refuse the state-administered chemical test, a number of state patrol officers in a number of jurisdictions around Georgia have had what they're calling no refusals. And what that means is that they will arrest you for a DUI. They'll go ahead and they will ask you to take the state-administered chemical test. If you say, no, I'm not taking a test, what will happen is, in addition to suspending your license, they're going to go ahead and try and seek a warrant for your blood. And they can do that. They can legally go get a judge or somebody to sign a warrant to take your blood and still charge you with a refusal. Now, that has not been litigated, whether the legalities of that are constitutional or even statutorily permitted within our state. But that's something, keep in mind, that could happen if you choose to say, I'm not taking your test. Fair enough. They're going to get a warrant for you.